Welcome back to Loosening Up, the KA-EMDR Podcast. I'm Danielle Ciccone. Today, it's just going to be me with my guest, Ashley Hartman. She's someone who took our training last year in 2025, and she's joined us for our experiential training a couple times, and we've just loved having her. I've had the chance to do some consultation with her and talk about how she's just taken this and running with it in her practice. So I'm really excited to bring her on today, and I hope you enjoy this episode. All right. Hello, Ashley.
Hi, hello.
It's so good to have you on here. I'm so excited to interview you today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for making the
Oh,
time.
thank you so much for having me.
And Michelle really wants to be here. She was having some technical issues today, so she's not going to be with us, unfortunately, but she adores you, and we both adore you. So
Oh, thank you so much.
I
It's
know she
mutual.
wants to be here. Yeah. Okay, well, why don't we just start with a little introduction? Do you want to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you are, a little bit about your practice, whatever you would like people to know?
Yeah, sure. My name is Ashley Hartman. I live in the Chicago suburbs. So my practice right now is located in New Lenox, which is the south suburbs of Chicago. I've been practicing for 15 years in a variety of settings, but the last 10 have been in private practice. I most recently made a shift. I have owned a women's specialized trauma therapy practice for the past 7 or 8 years. And very recently, I've made a shift to going into really just kind of focusing in the ketamine EMDR and intensives and a lot of that attachment work. And so it is called The Sacred Becoming, and I'm really excited to launch that. And yeah, it's been amazing. I specialize in complex trauma, developmental trauma, and I utilize a lot of methods. But one of the ones that's been my favorite recently has been the ketamine EMDR. I think
Mm.
it's really been kind of a game changer, I must say, for my clients who are, often come to me feeling really stuck
Mhm.
and not being able to move the material despite like doing all the things.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of attachment focused EMDR, IFS, parts work. I'm a yoga teacher, so I do a lot of trauma informed yoga and somatics. My ideal clients are the ones that are like doing all the things. They're the high achievers, the over functioners. I work with a lot of women and moms, and I do work with men too. And usually these are the clients who've done and tried everything.
Mhm.
And they're still kind of feeling like the same in their body. And ketamine EMDR and working with you and Michelle has been such a game changer for the practice.
Awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. And I think that's been the case for Michelle and I too. A lot of our clients are people that have, they've done a lot of therapy, they've tried a lot of things. And like you're saying, there's just like this stuckness that this seems to help actually move, which is really
Yeah.
exciting. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I really wanted to interview you, first of all, you're lovely. I've just so enjoyed getting to know you, but I love how you're just like taking this and running with it, right?
Yeah.
But but tell us, how did you initially get interested in bringing in the ketamine component? Like, what inspired you to even learn this in the first place, specifically the ketamine assisted EMDR piece?
Okay. So I think that's probably like a loaded question, but I
Okay.
think like many of us with healers, I think I was noticing a lot of the similar things in my ideal clients as I
Mhm.
was in myself,
Mhm.
and doing all the things, all the therapy, and it wasn't really, uh, I wasn't really noticing like the kind of shifts that I wanted to in my behavior and my patterns. Like I was very self-aware of what was
Mhm.
happening, but I couldn't just like get there. And so I really was at a time in my life where I was making a lot of shifts personally and professionally.
Mhm.
And there was just this calling for me to kind of move towards psychedelics. So I began my own psychedelic journey
Mhm.
with somatics and psychedelics. I did like long form ketamine journeys,
Mhm.
the therapist, and incorporating some somatic and attachment work. And that was lovely, and did provide some insight. However, I noticed personally in my own work and journey that while it was really insightful,
Mhm.
um, and it made me feel a little bit better for the time being,
Yeah.
uh, there wasn't there wasn't really like a huge shift in terms of like the way that I viewed myself or the patterns, and so it got me kind of thinking about like what else.
Mhm.
And I remember I was on a trip to California, and you and Michelle were on the Notice That podcast
Mhm.
episode, and I
Mhm.
listened to it with my partner, and I like played it. I was like, "You got to hear this! This
Oh.
sounds awesome!" And I just decided right then and there I have to email you and like
Mhm.
figure more out about this because I love EMDR. And like maybe there's something to this. So yeah, I think that was the beginning of it. And I think shortly after, a few months later, I had scheduled the training to take with you guys in September.
Mm. That's awesome. Actually, that's such a common story, like, it being kind of a personal discovery. Um, I don't know, I think it definitely has been for me. I mean,
Mhm.
I learned ketamine assisted therapy just professionally before I tried it personally, but it was definitely the personal work that got me really invested in this, right? And I've heard that so many times. I think that's really, really common in this field.
Yeah.
Um Nice. Okay. All right. So what was it like then when you first learned this? Just kind of like learning the theory of it and the rationale, and then actually doing the experiential component where you actually got to practice it and receive it. Like, how did it kind of match up with your expectations or not? Or maybe surprise you? Or yeah, like what was your
Well,
experience of
it's
learning
such
it?
a good question because I think that within psychedelics, um, we kind of have these ideas of like what it's going to be and what it's going to look like,
Mhm.
and then when I went in and had the experiential, I mean, a lot of my ideas were like, this isn't going to be enough. Like 50
Mhm.
milligrams, it's a low dose.
Yep.
I've never really had any experience with doing like psychedelics in a psycholytic fashion, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so I honestly didn't think much was going to come of it, and then
You're
I
not
think
alone in that, by the way. That's I think a lot of
yeah.
people are kinda like, "This is really low dose.
Yeah.
How is this gonna do anything?" Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but I
Yeah.
was still curious and open, right? But just I gotta be honest, I think I didn't necessarily trust that anything was gonna
Yeah,
shift,
I get that.
and I was amazed, by what happened in my body,
Mhm.
just
Mhm.
from the 50 milligrams. In my
Mhm.
experiential, I had a very somatic experience
Mhm.
and completely dropped out of my more intellectualized part of my brain, and really was just noticing like a lot of intensity of somatic feelings in my
Mhm.
body. And as I was like moving through that, I couldn't believe what was coming up,
Mm.
in a way that felt both gentle and very, very powerful. And by
Yeah.
the end of the 90 minutes, it felt, first of all, went by in a blink, but then it also just felt so transformative as like I couldn't believe all of that was coming up from,
Mhm.
the target.
Yeah. Yeah, I like the way you put that, gentle but powerful. And
Mhm.
really, like, that makes sense to me because that's been my experience. Would you describe it as powerful but not overwhelming?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think what I often say to my clients, as a complex PTSD survivor myself, one of the
Mhm.
most terrifying aspects of that is feeling out of control.
Yeah.
Feeling out of control of your body, out of control of your mind, because when you
Mhm.
were young, that was so dangerous and it was so
Mhm.
threatening.
Yeah.
So most of my clients, when I bring up ketamine, EMDR, or any psychedelics, they have an initial like, no way, and that's
Exactly.
so protective.
Yep.
Um, However, with this, when I say gentle and powerful, I mean like, you're there isn't this sense of losing control, and I
Mhm.
think that is so important for
Mhm.
people to who've survived some of the worst things to still be able to have this lived experience of having agency in their body
Yeah.
and noticing like I'm in control, I have agency, I'm feeling this intensity, and
Mhm.
like I'm not out of my body.
Mhm.
Because in order to heal these things, we also have to be able to have this embodied experience of feeling the distress. And
Yep.
so the low dose of ketamine, I think, is honestly the best thing for this. It's so impressive.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you for speaking to that because we talk about that a lot, right? That's why we love this concept of loosening up, right? The
Mhm.
name of the podcast versus having to fully let go. Because I know for me, when I was first learning psychedelic assisted therapy in more the larger dose journey way, that whole concept of like trust, let go, be open, surrender, theoretically, it sounded nice, but I know my system was like, "I don't wanna do that." You know? No, thank you." And I think that's true for so many people. And again, not to say that there can't be value to doing these bigger psychedelic experiences, but I'm with you. Like, for complex trauma survivors, that is such a scary concept. So, we talk a lot about this is like a softening, a loosening up. So I like that you use the word like gentle, but still powerful. And I think that's probably the part that catches people by surprise, that it doesn't have to be this blast off, you know, experience to still be powerful,
Absolutely. And in
right?
fact, I would say, from an attachment lens, it's also a corrective emotional experience.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is I can feel intensity in my body. I can feel grief. I can feel
Mhm.
fear. I
Mhm.
can feel profound disappointment or betrayal, which are some of the most common themes I see from
Mhm.
my clients as they're navigating this. And they can feel that in their body and still also notice I'm okay. And one of the things I've noticed come up so much, in working with parks with my clients is this pattern of noticing the intensity, for example, like noticing the grief,
Mhm.
and then maybe a disassociated part comes online or like
Absolutely, of
an
course. Yeah.
internalized part comes online, and
Yep.
think that that's so, so important, and I often
Mhm.
talk to my clients about, and then, I do a lot of work beforehand so that their parts feel safe,
Mhm.
showing up exactly as they are. But when, you notice the grief or whatever uncomfortable emotion and your disassociated part comes online and that
Mhm.
looks like, you know, nothing, black,
Mhm.
nothing's
Uh-huh.
happening.
Yep.
I think it's what I've seen that's so incredibly beautiful is when I work with my clients and help them just like, let's notice that. Let's notice what's in the room. Let's not try to change it at all. Let's just be with it. Let it get as big as it needs to be. And
Mhm.
so we're not trying to make it go anywhere. And then
Mhm.
we notice it and we tap that in.
Mhm.
And unlike in traditional EMDR, the noticing, the witnessing, the
Mhm.
being with the disassociation or the intellectualization or meaning making. I think there's something so powerful about that, and it softens.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, something I've noticed, tell me if you've noticed this too. It's not because sometimes people will describe it as all the defenses just, immediately go away. I don't necessarily think that's how it goes. I
No.
think it's this most of the time in my experience, it's, "Oh, I can see it happening." I'm noticing not only the pain, right? The thing I'm trying to process, but I'm starting to notice the defense or the part that wants to come in and protect me. And I have some awareness of it though, and I can have compassion for it, and I can go, "Oh, I see how that's happening right now or that's wanting to happen." And then there's like an opportunity to acknowledge it, and I guess I would say kind of make a choice. So it's not this like kind of knee jerk reaction that just comes on automatically. It's like you kind of notice it wanting to happen, and then there becomes like a choice.
Yeah.
There's a
Yeah,
a
that's
a
so
bit
so
of a
so interesting. Yeah.
separation. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, of course, of course. And,
Yeah.
you know, though I really have really enjoyed, I think, the creative aspect of this, of really taking the ketamine EMDR protocol that you and Michelle created and sort of like making it my own. And I'm
Good.
really having like a lot of fun with it, adding,
Yeah.
trauma informed yoga and IFS and
Mhm.
attachment, EMDR, similar to Laura Parnell.
Mhm.
Because what I often kind of, and this is just my style, is when the disassociated part comes up, or when the other defender, the critical part, or the
Mhm.
intellectualizer, those are my
Mhm.
top 3 that tend to
Yep.
show up in the room,
Yep.
is what I like to do with them is really allow the client to just witness them, right? Like,
Mhm.
what's it like for us to notice and witness this part is
Mhm.
showing up, right? And maybe we can even get curious about, what is this part feel like it needs from you right now in
Mhm.
order to soften? What does
Yeah.
it need? What does it need us to know? Because I think what often happens in trauma is there's a lot of bypassing, like our
Mhm.
self aware parts. Like, we logically know X, Y, and Z, right? Like, I
Mhm.
shouldn't be in this relationship, or I shouldn't be treated like this. Yeah, but
Mhm.
that's cognitive, that's heady.
Yeah.
But then what happens is these younger parts who have needed to exist in our system in order for us to survive, the ones that minimize the pain, the ones that like, maybe fawned in order to stay attached. Like, they have
Mhm.
played such a pivotal role in our system, and we
Mhm.
wouldn't be where we are today if we didn't have them. And
Yep.
so I think ketamine EMDR also allows a beautiful opportunity for us to witness these parts and hold these parts as an integral part of the system, and then maybe help clients get a little bit more agency and access to the adult part of them that
Mhm.
brought them to ketamine EMDR, right? And
Yeah.
like, what's it like to notice, the adults who made the appointment to come and do this really brave, hard work? Like,
Mhm.
so like to notice that energy. And does
Mhm.
that part know that the disassociated part, they're you're in the same body. And
Mhm.
it's very often this like mind-blowing concept for
Mhm.
my clients, that the intellectualizer part or the defenses don't realize, like, there's an adult there that's got it.
Mhm.
They're stuck in trauma time.
Yeah.
So they're doing the exact thing they're supposed to do, defend.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, so I mean, I totally relate to everything you're saying, and that witness consciousness, right? It becomes so much more pronounced, I think, in this work. I know that Francine Shapiro talked a lot about that being an important component to EMDR, period, which I agree with. And then with the low dose of ketamine, it just seems to take that to a whole another level, right? To be able to
Absolutely.
really witness what's going on, hold it all, check it out, have some softening around it, and just to feel a sense of safety to explore what's actually going on, you know? So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. And
it's
I mean, I think truly, like, I think that in the industry, that's where a lot of us as therapists, we were failed in terms of
mm,
how we were sold in our education about how to heal, what that looks
mhm,
like.
mhm,
And you speaking to orienting and orientation, and, there's a million modalities out there. And, you know,
mhm.
they all have their own value. But
Yeah,
from my own lived experience, I think, and it's taken of doing all the things,
mhm,
I don't think I ever really connected with this in an embodied way until I started going to yoga. And I
mm,
realized how disassociated and
mhm,
disconnected I have been from my body my entire life. And
mhm,
that being self aware and knowing why I do all those things, um,
mhm,
is just a bigger example of disassociation. And I
mhm.
think we need our bodies, like, have to have the wisdom and lived experience of feeling safe
Yeah,
before we can go to these dark places. Like,
mhm,
it's not going to happen. And
mhm,
when traditional EMDR with clients, clients will often come to me, and my heart breaks because they say I'm stuck. It didn't
mhm,
work for me.
mhm.
And
Yeah,
then they think that they did something wrong, that they
mhm,
failed, that they're broken, and that,
mhm,
like, they can't be helped.
mhm,
When in fact, it's quite the opposite. Their systems are so wise, and they have such
mhm,
intelligent protectors that they didn't
mhm,
even realize, like, they didn't even have to ask these parts. They just are protecting them, and
mhm,
not consciously allowing them to access material, because they they have some level of knowing that, like, this isn't safe.
Yeah.
And with psychedelics and with this, it allows us to very gently update these parts and remind them in terms of trauma time. These
Mm,
parts are often very young and believe that if they let go of this idea that, if I stop making meaning, or if I stop
mm,
minimizing, or if I stop fawning, it'll be catastrophic,
mm,
because
mhm,
back then it was.
mhm. Yeah. I love it's very clear, your compassion, your empathy for your clients. It's really, really clear. What has it been like as you've started to kind of roll this out? Especially, I'm curious if I'm guessing you have people on your caseload who maybe tried EMDR with you or maybe other, tools that you had in your toolbox. And then when you kind of presented them with ketamine assisted EMDR, especially in this low, psycholytic range, first of all, what was it like for them to even hear about it as an option? And then what was it like for them to experience the difference? Maybe I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's kind of twofold. I think many of my clients are they're looking for something. And so
Mhm,
they're looking for something to be, to heal. I mean, we're all designed to heal.
mm,
People are motivated to get better.
mhm,
So I think hearing about it, they were a lot more intrigued, like, wow,
mhm.
this sounds really exciting, but then understandably apprehensive, as
Yeah.
for all the things we mentioned before.
Mhm,
I'm afraid to be out of my body. Is this going to be one more thing that doesn't work?
mhm,
Ketamine, like, don't they do that at raves? Like a
mhm.
lot of
Yeah,
normal fears and apprehension, right?
right.
But I think with a lot of psychoeducation, and again, me doing it and having my own lived experience, I'm very passionate about it. So
Yeah.
I think that a lot of just conversations and discussions is really helped with clients feel a little bit more open. And
Mhm,
now in my practice, it's been transformative. I'm
mm,
having clients come in and move material that they say that they have not been able to move in 20 years of therapy.
hmm,
And the relief on their face to, leave a session and have this internalized, like an embodied knowledge of, I'm not broken.
mm,
It's been
mm.
beautiful. Not like know it cognitively, but to
Yeah.
know it in their body. And then
Mhm,
what I think is the most beautiful is, the way that my clients then take that out into the world. And now what do we do when we integrate that?
yeah.
Right? Like what's it like to integrate this knowledge that I'm not broken, or, that
Mhm,
I'm not bad, I'm good.
mm,
And how do I, make changes for myself and my relationships in the world? And that's been incredible, because that's the rewiring of the
mhm.
brain into something far more adaptive.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's it been like for you? Because Michelle and I always talk about how the work is, well, easier in a way, right?
Mhm.
As a therapist, the work becomes a little easier and it can even be fun in some ways. I know you were
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about kind of the creativity.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about how it kind of softens our own therapist
Mhm.
parts. The whole room gets a little
Oh,
more relaxed. So
yes.
I'm just curious for you, like in the room with people, how does it feel for you
Oh, it's
working
amazing.
in this way?
I love it. I love it. Yes to everything you just said.
Mm,
I think as a therapist, it's totally normal to have these worries about, like, am I doing it right? Am I
yeah.
gonna mess this up?
Mhm,
We
mhm.
all we wanna help and make our clients feel better. And
Yeah.
I think with a little bit of this medicine, I think
Mhm.
it eases a little bit of that for the therapists, which I think is also nice. But there's something spiritual about the experience,
Mm.
and I think we were speaking to that at this, like, last training that I
Yeah.
volunteered for. There's something that's spiritual that happens in the room.
Mm,
And there's often times where I'm very emotional when I'm with my clients. Again, using the attachment based model, as long as my clients consent, I tap on their legs.
mm,
And so they have I get really close to them,
mhm,
as long as they're comfortable with that. And every single one of them has been so far. And so I'll sit down, and they'll be on, the couch or whatever. And I gently tap on their legs and I maintain eye contact.
Mm,
So this like gentle, loving, attuned presence.
mhm,
And there has been something so incredibly powerful about watching. Like I can literally tell you, Danielle, I've seen the moment, and
mm.
I'm sure you can speak to this too, where you can see the moment. I mean, I like even it brings me to
Oh,
tears
yeah.
thinking about it, where it shifts for them,
Mm,
where you can see the young parts and you can almost like see the looping, where you're like
mhm,
really going down that rabbit hole and of these like negative beliefs. And you can
mhm,
see the moment
mm,
when it shifts into like and their facial expression change. And it's like that word you use, clarity. They
mhm,
start getting clarity about, wait a minute. And it's that. And it's like that is the beginning. And
mhm,
there's something transcendent about that. It's like they get access to this part of themselves, like who they were before the trauma all began. And I'm an adult and I am safe. And then they
mhm,
just kind of run with it, right? And like then their system just moves and moves and moves and moves toward healing. It's been so incredibly beautiful and moving to watch that and to like watch this reparenting
mm,
experience
mhm.
happen right before your eyes is been the favorite my my favorite gift of doing this work.
Oh, yeah. Ah, I'm so glad you've had that experience because I know exactly what you mean, and it is I mean, it's so meaningful. It's so rewarding, you know? Um, and you and I know that I'm not the one doing that to the person, but even to just be part of it, to be witnessing it, to be
Yes.
just facilitating in some ways is
Yes.
just such a such a gift, right?
Oh my gosh.
Um,
Yeah. To hold the container, like that's often how I think about it is what a gift to be able to hold the container,
yeah.
right? For clients to be able to know they can come, that it's safe to come back home to themselves. That
Mhm,
it's safe
mhm,
for them to remember the worst thing that happened to them. They
mhm,
survived the worst thing. Uh, and for them to like I see them get access to their adult self and then
mhm,
I really work with them on how can they show up for those younger parts, right?
mhm,
And see them and witness them and it becomes this like beautiful experience where the clients start to realize that they're the medicine and
mm,
they're the one that they've been waiting for
hmm.
all along. And for complex PTSD survivors it is like that's life changing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I always feel the desire to say this, that I don't think you or I or Michelle would claim that that can't ever be done without the use of ketamine.
I would.
Oh,
I'll
okay.
be controversial. I'll be willing to be the therapist who will go on the record and say, I don't think so, or psychedelics. I don't
It
think so.
in my experience, it can be done. It takes a lot more time. It takes a lot more work. This really seems to enhance that ability.
Yeah.
And what's so cool to me is that it lasts, because
Yes.
I definitely, heard people ask questions or maybe have concerns that, okay, well, the client might feel better or be able to be more kind to themselves or, do some of that reparenting in the session. But then what's going to happen when the medicine wears off and, they come in the next week? Is it just going to be all for nothing? Right. And tell me your experience, but in my experience, that does not appear to be the case. It does not appear to be just a short term, only while the medicine is in the system type of
Oh,
effect,
yeah.
right?
No,
Like that
absolutely.
kind of that opens up the possibilities, but then that healing continues, right? Or that capacity continues. Does that make
Yes.
sense?
I love that
Um,
you use the word capacity because that's what I think is so important here.
yeah, yeah.
I think that when we talk about the idea of whether or not somebody like, what the question you just asked, right? Like, I think capacity is something that's so important because
Hmm.
this isn't about people, like failing in any way, but the
Hmm.
idea that maybe your nervous system did not have the capacity to access that before. So
Yeah.
now this opens up that capacity. Now, I'll tell you that we all have free will and
Mm,
we have agency and we have
mhm,
choice. And
mhm,
so what I see is that absolutely now you're introduced to this
mhm,
new way of knowing or being, right?
mhm,
Like, and that's there. That's adaptive. That's like
mhm,
lived experience. But then it's also, I think, a lot about the humanity of all of us and
mm.
what do we do with that? Which is
Yeah.
why I spend so much time with my clients on how it's actually not what happens in the session, which is
Mhm,
the important part. It's what happens after, like the
mhm.
integration. What is it that you're going to do
Yeah.
and with this, valuable like window of new learning and when your brain is a sponge because we
Mm,
have this unique and very rare opportunity to just soak up and like
mhm,
create new neural networks and new neural fibers and repattern things differently when
mhm.
everything in our system is going to want to go back to that old pattern. Everything, everything.
Mhm,
That it's going to want to be stronger than ever.
mm,
But there's also going to be this new adaptive information of, okay, but like this. And
mhm,
so when you can have the ability to, like you say, like kind of step back and be like, okay, now what can I do with that? Whereas before ketamine EMDR or even before any kind of healing, I think
mhm,
a lot of us operate under like, I can't leave this relationship because X.
mm,
I'm
mhm.
trapped, I'm bad, I'm broken, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy, whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
Now you do ketamine EMDR, and even after one session, okay, let's just say
Mhm,
the negative belief is, wow, I guess, wait, I am lovable.
mm,
Okay. So now you're approaching the situation, well, you're still going to be faced with that relationship and what the heck
mhm,
to that. That
mhm.
doesn't
Yeah.
fix that. But now, unlike before, you're able to approach the situation through a little bit of a different lens.
Mhm,
Before it was only I'm unlovable and I'm unworthy. But
mhm,
now you have the lived experience of I am lovable. And so now
mhm,
you have a choice, right? And I
mhm,
think that's how we can heal and grow and do things differently is when we can take what we know to be true in our body
mhm.
and then
Yeah.
make different choices.
And in fact, I mean, I'll even just say, because I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, I think there's some people who, I guess I'll just say, maybe won't be ready to do this work because it probably will force some change in your life for a lot of people, right? When it comes to relationships and, what you're willing to put up with or not. And that's where the rubber meets the road sometimes, right? It's like,
Absolutely.
okay, so now what about this relationship or this part of my life? And that's not always easy. I'll
No,
just say that. I'll just be honest in saying that I have had situations before where we made some big shifts in session and then, it got hard in a way for the client to sort of decide what they were going to do with it afterwards. It was hard.
absolutely.
They got through it and some really important stuff happened. Um, but it's not easy. So I guess really what I'm saying is it's deep work. I think for people to do this type of work, they've got to be open to change, and
I couldn't agree more. I tell my
right?
clients time,
Yeah.
and I'm very protective of my clients. I have a strong mama part and
Yeah.
I name it and I say,
Yeah.
all right, but you know, it's important to know that when we're going to do this work, like I want you to ask yourself, like, what's your why?
Yeah.
Like, what's
Mhm.
your why? And what are you willing to do to get there?
Mm. Mhm.
And I'm very, very open, just like you. And I
Yeah.
say, your relationships are going to change. I'm
Yeah.
not going to sugarcoat it for you. They are.
Mhm.
This
Mhm.
work, your relationships will change.
Mhm.
And I tell them, if you're expecting to come into this
Yeah.
and you're wanting to hold that better, you're wanting to increase your capacity
Right.
to abandon yourself
Ugh.
and hold it more, then that's where I often kind of pause for a moment and say, like, maybe we need to do, some more parts work or some
Yes.
more somatic work or that, right?
Yep.
Because then, perhaps we're not really getting into this where we're actually in being authentic and in a place of what would it be like to move these things. Because you're
Yep.
right. I've had similar things with clients before. We've done it and we've had to stop because
Yeah.
that newfound knowledge of I was betrayed or,
Mhm.
which is a very common theme of CPTSD.
Mhm.
Well, like you said, the system maybe perhaps isn't ready to cope with, well, what changes do I need to make now to cope with that knowing
Yeah.
differently? And that's important to be
Hmm.
able to hold both of those things, right? Like when you realize this knowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't say any of this to like scare anybody away from it, but
No.
I just want to be real that I think this is a how do I want to say this? This is for it takes a certain type of person to be ready for this type of work, right? And for some people it's not going to be their first go around in therapy.
No.
You know, maybe for some people it might be. But yeah, I think the impact can be really big, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And but I think maybe even just giving yourself compassion for whatever place you're in, and like
Yeah.
your system, your body, you will know. You'll know when it's ready. Like
Yeah.
we've all had moments in our life where we had to make a big decision, right? Like leave a
Mhm.
job, leave a marriage, leave whatever. Like
Mhm.
we didn't know that cognitively. We just knew in our body.
Mhm.
And I think we all deserve a little bit more compassion.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's going to happen when it's ready to happen. But
Yeah.
you have to listen to that part of your body that's like, I'd rather be doing anything else than doing this right now. And then usually you kind of know.
Yep. I hear you. Okay, Ashley. Well, I hate to end this because I love talking with you, but I think it's time for us to kind of bring this to a close.
Yes, yes. Well,
I'm
thank you
curious
so
if
much
you
for having me.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. If people want to find out more information about you, I'll put your information in the description of the
Yeah.
episode. But is there anything you want to share about how people can find you or
Oh, yeah, sure.
website?
Yeah, so my website is The Sacred Becoming. So it's www dot the dash sacred dash becoming. I'm also on Instagram, The Sacred Becoming. I offer individual sessions. I also offer ketamine EMDR intensives.
Mhm.
So I'm licensed in Illinois and in Colorado. And so I do offer retreats as well. So
Mhm.
retreats in Colorado are going to be coming up, but the intensives are something I'm really excited about. And what that looks like is 3 days, 90-minute ketamine EMDR sessions,
Mhm.
followed by, a short little break, and then a customized trauma informed somatic yoga integration session
Mhm.
followed right after that. And so we do that 3 days, either in a row or spaced apart, to really kind of target and hit maybe a theme or an area of your life.
Mhm.
And those have been really, really excited in building. So,
Right.
so yeah, I have more information about that on my website, on my social media. I have a YouTube channel, The Sacred Becoming. And so if anybody is interested or just wants to talk more,
Mhm.
feel free to reach out. And I offer free 20-minute consultations. I'd be happy to just have a conversation about what what people are looking for, and if this feels like this could be a good fit, and we can go from there.
That sounds great. Well, hopefully we'll have you back with Michelle next time because I'd love to hear how the retreats are going. I know we've talked about that a bit in consultation, and it's so
Yeah.
exciting. So I'm stoked to hear how all that plays out.
Oh,
Well,
thank
thank
you so
you.
much.
Oh yeah, Ashley, you are awesome. You are going to help so many people. I'm sure you already have, but
Oh,
you're just
thank
such a gift.
you. Thank you so much for your support. It's been
Yeah.
amazing working with you and Michelle. I'm so incredibly humbled by what you guys
Mm,
have created and put together. It's fantastic.
thank
You
you,
ladies
Ashley.
are really killing it.
Thank you so much. All right. I'm sure I'll talk with you soon. Ashley, take good care.
Oh, you take good care too.
All
Bye.
right. Bye, Ashley.
Thanks for listening to Loosening Up, the KA-EMDR podcast. If you'd like to learn more, visit www.ketamineassistedemdr.com, where you can find out more about our research, our training programs, and you can also find a KA-EMDR therapist to work with.